8:02 Central African Time. Hello, Sunny Bonani. My name is Bob O'Connor. Welcome to the third tier of BrakeAway Racing League. As you can see, we have a 9-driver field here in our 5th race of the season. We're in Spain here today. Don Rabico, it's great to see you in the comment section. And it's great to have all of you here to witness, what we hope, what we expect will be a beautiful display of Tier 3 BrakeAway Racing League action. Bienvenidos a todos a Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya. Eso es BrakeAway Racing League, our third tier, and my Spanish is not quite far enough to take it any further than that. Some Tier 3 news. A former championship leader, Mfundo, is no longer a part of the third tier, having been promoted courtesy of a seat opening up in the second tier of the BrakeAway Racing League. Well, we congratulate Mfundo, but of course he does have a lot of fighting to do, joining in the 5th race of the Tier 2 season. So Mfundo is gone. He was the table topper. New championship leader is Shakes, who is represented here today in the colors of Red Bull. Shakes has been pretty sensational in the races that he has taken part in. Finished 3rd in China. He then missed 2 consecutive races, did Shakes, and came home to win in Qatar. So Shakes, proving their class, also just keen to claw their way up the BrakeAway Racing League ladder. Shakes and the Prince of South Africa are level at the top of the Tier 3 standings. Both have 44 points. Perk Mille has 36 points, tied with Brown Boy in that second place, if you will. The Skinny Gamer has 35 points behind that quartet. And then we have Kaboza on 32 points. Azuri has amassed 26 points, as has Sikle, who amassed 26 points before making their way up to the second tier. Just Tendo has 20 championship points. As Buddha, the founding member of the BrakeAway Racing League, has 16 championship points. Fana Finder has 8. And Alpa Raymain, who was back racing here today, having missed out on the action in Qatar. Well, Alpa Raymain, in the colors of Aston Martin, they have 6 points in total. It's been a mixed bag of a season for Alpa Raymain. Finished 9th in China, finished 8th in Saudi Arabia. Sadly crashed out in Baku in the 3rd race of the season, and did not race out in Qatar. Chilean Noble is in the comment section saying we can expect rain during the race. It's going to be a wet race. Chilean is, of course, none other than Shakes, who leads this championship at this point. We have 18 minutes of qualifying here. If you're brand new to this sport, or this esports even, the aim of the game in qualifying is simple. Go around the track as fast as you possibly can, and the driver who sets the fastest time will qualify as high up the grid, or as further forward up the grid as they can. Alpa Raymain opts to take out some of the braking board in a scrappy final few corners as he now begins a lap around this 4.6 kilometer circuit. Here comes Alpa Raymain into turn 1. Ahead of Raymain, of course, is Just Tendo, who's already begun their push lap. This is turn 3, the long right-hander, which really tests the balance of your car. There comes Just Tendo in sight of Alpa Raymain, whose sector 1 is a 22.210. Oh, a little bit of a moment there for Alpa Raymain on the exit of turn number 4. It's onto the brakes into the left-handing turn 5, and inches closer and closer to Just Tendo, who, on the basis of the current evidence we could see, is not close to Alpa Raymain pace-wise. That was turns 7 and 8 into the fast turn 9. to blast down this second DRS zone, inching closer and closer to Just Tendo ahead. Sector 2 split, 52.482. Watch that closely. Just Tendo ahead of Upper Remain has a slight twitch of the rear. Doesn't cost him a precious few tenths. Just Tendo may yet make way. Will they? Won't they? No. Tendo carries on, as does Upper Remain, now taking the final faster sector 3 of this circuit. This is turn 14, the final corner. It's Upper Remain and Tendo who will set the first times of the day. About 4 seconds between them. 1 minute 14.670 is the early benchmark by Alpha Remain. Now, which of the Red Bulls is furthest ahead? It is this man, the Prince of South Africa, one of the new leaders of the field, level on points with their teammate Shakes here today. This is the final sequences of corners. Can they give Alpha Remain a lot to think about? Behind the Prince of South Africa is the McLaren, presumably Skinny Gamer or Bert Millet. Here he comes. It's a faster 1 minute 14.182. Shakes low 1 minute 11s. So reckons Don Rabico in the comment section. The Prince of South Africa has just put in their fast attempt to start off proceedings over here. The McLaren driver further ahead is none other than Bert Millet. 36 championship points among the top runners in this field. 13.752 is that benchmark. Here comes Shakes, who sets a scorching 1 minute 11.590. Don Rabico on the money, on point, and pretty much on the mark as far as Rabico's predictions were concerned. Can anybody beat this? I would love to hear your comments. Meanwhile, Skinny Gamer had also crossed the line behind Shakes with a 13.896. It's a McLaren 2-3 as things currently stand. Still a lot of qualifying yet to go. We've yet to see what Azuri can do. And Espexa, Buda, the veteran Buda, currently on their outlaps. What does Kaboza have in their pocket as far as pace is concerned? We've got a brand new entrant to the Tier 3 arena. Everybody give a warm round of applause and a welcome to Tier 3 to none other than Baleem Arshad. Currently yet to see what they can do as far as their pace is concerned. Driving for Team Alpine is Baleem, so we're going to see exactly what they have in the bag. We're going to hop on board with a couple more drivers here before we get too far ahead of ourselves. It Shakes from Bert Millet and Skinny Gamer in the top 3 positions. The Prince of South Africa has set the fourth quickest time from Alpha Remain P5 Just Tendo with the 6th quickest, although it is way off the mark as far as pace is currently concerned. So we have Espexa and Buda who are on their outlaps, running one behind the other. And thank you for joining the third tier of BrakeAway League Racing if you have just joined us. Definitely Duke is here, making the mark in the Tier 2, and he's here to support a field which he took part in times gone by. Espexa, scheduling issues are bringing him down to the 3rd tier, no longer racing in Tier 2, but is going to give their absolute all, and may yet have something to say in the fight for pole position. Turn 1 takes a little bit of curve, not quite the case through Turn 2. Here comes the long right-hander of Turn 3. He opts to keep it tighter to the apex compared to some of the drivers that we've seen so far. 21.675 is not so bad as the Sector 1 split almost takes a little bit of grass on the exit of 4. It's the left-hander of 5 where he has, flirts with his brakes somewhat, does Espexa, who's in the colors of Ferrari here today. Took a lot of curb on the exit of that. This is Turn 7, which comes quickly into the kink of 8. And on-rushing turn number 9, he will take it in 6th gear. Did not lift too much off the throttle as he blasts through the back straight into turn number 9. 51.134 seconds is Espeza's Sector 2 split. Where will he fit among the top runners? Could he squeeze in between the McLarens, perhaps? Give the Prince of South Africa some early headaches. It's the penultimate corner for Espexa, who is absolutely flat out. It's 6th gear, but lifted a little bit off the throttle there through the final turn 14. 112.749 is not bad at all as the Ferrari goes blasting down the main straight to nudge the McLarens down to P3 and 4 respectively. 7 drivers have set their times up until this point, and we'll hop on over now to the would-be 8th driver, whose Sector 1 split was a 21.741. It is Azuri, who did not make too many friends in the early races of the season. 50.868 Sector 2 split is something to pay very close attention to. Azuri for Team Haas, he's got the pace. Oh, it takes a little bit of grass. There through turn 12, I believe that was 13. This is turn 14. It's Azzurri blasting towards the line. DRS open P2. He pips the Ferrari in an equal engine, but of course he does have that pace advantage, so well done to him. Here is our brand new driver with a sector 1 split of the 21 seconds. Caboza is, I believe, further along down his qualifying. We'll stay on board with Boleyn to see what sort of pace they have in hand. There he comes now towards the end of sector 2 and turn number 9. 51.254 is that split. Takes the left-hander, tries to maintain as much momentum as possible in an unforgiving corner if you're too eager on the throttle. But not Boleyn, trying to keep us steady. Takes a little bit of curve there through the third to last corner. This is the final corner, but we did see a lot of lift off the throttle for the Alpine driver who will cross the line. P4 is not bad at all behind Caboza, who would cross the line just before Boleyn Arshad. So decent pace that the Alpine driver has here. And, Tier 3 ever expanding and does not get any easier. So if you do not put in the hard yards in the simulator in the practice sessions, well, Boleyn Arshad is not going to take any prisoners. He's here to make his presence felt. And who knows, come the end of the season, might we see Boleyn fight their way up into the playoffs? It's going to take a lot of doing. But that was the first taste of the Alpine driver's pace here at the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya. Welcome, Boleyn, to BrakeAway League Racing. The Prince of South Africa is back to give it another push in this circuit. Takes a lot of curve through turn 1. How costly will that be? Thankfully for the Prince of South Africa, it is a valid lap, no invalidation. It is so close between the drivers in P3 through to P5, so says definitely Duke. Absolutely. Duke, the Prince of South Africa, has found 3/10 worth of improvement, looking to find his way into the 1 minute 13 minimum. But we'll look, of course, to break that barrier into the 1 minute 12 come the end of this lap. It's going to take a lot of doing. This is turns 7 and 8 for the Prince of South Africa. Here comes the fast corner of turn 9. He lifted half of the throttle there, as you can see through the RPM input on that steering wheel. He still has a 2/10 advantage compared to his previous best effort. That was 9. This is 10. Oh, that was 9-10, I beg your pardon. And now into turn 13 and the final turn 14. Heavy lift off the throttle there for the Prince of South Africa, who perhaps did not have a lot of faith in the grip that he would have through the final corner. Still finds improvement, but it's only up to P6. Prince of South Africa, 1 minute 13.584. Just Tendo is also on their second push lap, as Perk Mille has found about 6/100ths of a second worth of improvement, blasting now down the back straight. Oh, make that 6/10 of a second. So it's a huge leap by Perk Mille here. Who found a heck of a lot of improvement through that middle sector. Now trying to maintain that advantage, that momentum through this final sequence of corners, and it's up by almost a full second worth of improvement, but not quite enough to trouble the Ferrari of Estetza and Aveo. Perk Mille up to P6. It shakes from Azzurri, from Caboza in the top 3 positions. And speaking of shakes, is the class of the field. He's still found, come the end of Sector 1, a margin of improvement. A slower moving car makes way for him. Might even be their teammate there, who goes completely off the track, making way presumably also for one of the McLarens. That was turn 9 for Shakes, who has been absolutely imperious. And we'll get a sense of what it feels like to be on board with the flying Red Bull driver. Shakes flat out through the final corner. Try to downshift there. Will he find improvement? The answer is yes. Finds almost half a second of improvement. 1 minute 11.155 is sensational. More than a second quicker than Azzurri. It's about 1.1 seconds, give or take, the gap between Shakes in that provisional pole position, which will take a lot to be challenged, and Azzurri, who currently holds that P2 spot. On board with the veteran S. Buddha we go. First lap was not so great, but managed to find about 7/10 of a second of improvement through the first sector compared to their first lap. Heavy on the brakes there through turns 7 and 8. How much will that cost? Buda through the back straight we go, as Don Ravico urges Shakes to give us a lot more pace, a lot more record-breaking times, well, according to his fast pace, and Buda through the initial part of Sector 3, trying to carry as much momentum as possible, was on the verge there of going over track limits, but he kept it within the limits as Buda finds more, well, almost 2 seconds worth of improvement, but only good enough for P9 as things currently stand. Buda up to P9. Alpha Racing, 1 minute 14.6 last time out was good enough for P10. We'll hop on board with Estexa, who did find an improvement, now up to P3, 1 minute 12.302. It's Shakes from Missouri from Estexa. Capoza is on an outlap in P4. Billy Mashad also in an outlap, currently holding that P5 spot. Perth Millet is 6th from their teammate, Skinny Gamer. The Prince of South Africa currently on an in-lap in that P8 spot, or perhaps about to begin another push lap. Alpha Racing has had to abandon their push lap attempt. He's on Alpha to the runoff areas. Better hope to rejoin that track safely. It's Prince of South Africa at 8th. It's Buda 9th. Alpha Racing is 10th, and there's a slow-moving Red Bull that he then surpasses at that particular point. So we'll catch up with Caboza. We did not watch his onboards last time out, and we'll see how the AlphaTauri driver fares this time out. On board we go. The veteran, former driver of the top tier, now flying their trade in Tier 3, heavy curve through Turn 1. Oh, a huge moment, loses some grip and immediately abandons that push lap. So Caboza was trying to be on the limit. Instead, he, went over the limit that he might have wanted. Meanwhile, behind them, it's the on-rushing Baleem Arshad. Back to give it another push. It's the newbie, who sadly is down about 9 thousandths of a second compared to their first push lap. That was at the end of Sector 1. Are you still pushing, is the question. This is the kink of 6, straight into 7. Does not quite take curve, but there's a car right there, almost on the line. Just Tendo, what in the world was that? Rashim had to take some evasive action to the slow-moving Alfa Romeo. Just Tendo making no room there. And he still managed to find about almost half a tenth. Another slow-moving car on the racing line compromises Baleem's lap. He will not be happy with that at all. Will be fuming. Will be on the radio to the stewards that these drivers get out of the way. Despite 2 drivers in his way, he nudges his way up to P4. What could it have been? That is the question. And there's only 1 minute 18 seconds of this session to go. Baleem found improvement, but it could have been so much more. Oh no, Caboza, on what would have been their final push lap, has invalidated in these initial sequences of corners. So P5 is what he would hope would be the best, provided that the likes of Skinny Gamer and the Prince of South Africa, Alfa Romeo, Buda, and Tendo do not improve. On board we go with the McLaren of Skinny Gamer, sadly down 2 1,000ths of a second as he makes his way through Turn 4 and kisses the wall. Does Skinny Gamer, who, seemingly did not demolish that wing completely. I do wonder there if it's a case of luck or if it's a case of lobby settings, which might have spared his wing from taking much more damage there. Skinny Gamer is not going to be able to improve, so the pressure of the final minute of qualifying is really starting to tell here. And the Prince of South Africa is next to send it into the wall, but this time their wing is absolutely gone. The Prince of South Africa, Skinny Gamer, not having a lot of fun here through the initial, through the final part of this qualifying. And it is pretty much over. If you have not started your final push lap, it's tickets for your prospects. We're going to see how Azuri is faring. It's pretty much a one-shot qualifying here. If you've just joined for this final minute, or indeed if you're putting all your cards out on the table here. No, Azuri is definitely moving way slower than he would want, and that car is slowing. Slight glitches there, so we're not going to see a marked improvement for Azuri. Shakes is in pole position, unchallenged by any of these drivers in this field. Azuri will presumably come home in P2. Believe the newcomer will start this race in P4. Kapoza, P5. Perk Melee, 6th. Their teammate Skinny Gamer will start in 7th. The Prince of South Africa will start this race in P8, and Alpha Raymain in 9th. As Buddha, the veteran founding member of BrakeAway Racing League, will start the race in P10, and Just Tendo is on their in lap. They will start this race in P11. That is your field, folks. Prince with the 7-lap quali said Billy Hendricks. Smirch Jangle responding to some of the late mistakes that we saw towards the end of this qualifying session. Not very easy. What can the newcomer do? What can the likes of the rest of the BrakeAway Tier 3 contingent do in answer of the newcomer? Welcome. You're just in time to begin the race proper. This is your qualifying field. Shakes the class of the field by more than a second from Azuri. Espexa, about 1.1 seconds behind the pole sitter. Belima Shard, 1.3 seconds in P4. Kapoza in that 5th spot for AlphaTauri. Let's take a look at how intense it was. Skinny Gamer opted to start this session on a set of mediums, then used 2 sets of softs. It was 3 sets of tires for Esbuda, but was not good enough to send him any higher than P10. Also 3 sets of tires used for the newcomer Belim, who could have had so much more were not for traffic. 2 sets each for all of the top 3 drivers, as well as the likes of Kapoza in that P5 spot. Welcome to Spain. It is the Tier 3 race. Race number 5 up next. Billy Hendricks in the comment section saying we need a mentor for the Prince of South Africa. I'll tell you what, these drivers need a miracle as far as grip is concerned, because it is absolutely pouring here at the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya. I don't expect anything less than a full wet compound of tires. Puddles in the pit lane, pandemonium possibly at the race start as these drivers struggle for grip and the run down towards turn number 1. I do hope that we could have a decent contingent of drivers who finish this race first and foremost. It is not going to be easy. It is the ultimate test of skill in a circuit which can send you hurtling towards the gravel at the very least. It is 5 lights. It is the only time South Africa look forward to the lights going out. Here we go. Shakes versus Azuri versus Espexa. Who will have the line towards the first corner? Shakes hangs on. Espexa seemingly ahead of Azuri, who we know will not give anything away. But look at Kapoza, who has found his way up towards the top runners. Oh, there's drivers glitching, but it looks like Azuri is still in that P2 spot. Kapoza, has he fallen down? Maybe, maybe not. Azuri hunting down the drivers here in this pack, and it seems the Prince of South Africa may have lost connection, so just to excuse us briefly as we send that invite to the Prince of South Africa to make sure that they can take control of their car once again. It was an early set of yellow flags here, and let's take a look at the early movers here. Skinny Gamer, the one of the biggest movers alongside Just Tendo. Esbuda has crashed out towards the back of the field. Esbuda, it looks like the exit of turn number 3 or turn 4 is out. Crashing out, leaving the session, bringing out the first virtual safety car of the day. Yellow flags all around, no overtaking allowed, racing suspended while the officials and the marshals clear the wreck of that Mercedes W14 in the hands of Esbuda, which has been the first casualty from this race. Esbuda is out, and as things currently stand, it is Shakes from Missouri from Skinny Gamer. Kaboza gaining that 1 spot since the start of this race. Alpha Raymain moving up a net 4 places. Just Tendo gained 5, at this particular point. Shakes has crossed the start-finish line, and it looks like Azuri and Skinny Gamer are going wheel to wheel in the one towards turn number 1, both on a set of full wet compound tires. Who will be braver on the brakes? Oh no, that was Kapoza and Skinny Gamer. Kapoza, the veteran, overtakes that Skinny Gamer. They are cousins, remember. It's a family affair, and the one towards turn number 1. But will Skinny Gamer lose even more time? It looks like he's struggling for grip, and Kapoza is inching further and further ahead. Now has Shakes and Azuri in their sights. Azuri managed to overtake the race-leading Shakes. We have a new race leader, folks, in the second of a total 23 laps. Shakes will look to bide their time, knowing, of course, that Azuri can be unforgiving, and we've seen those moments of contact between Azuri and a whole host of drivers back in the first race in China. Azuri still keeping it together in that P1 spot. Kapoza looking to inch closer and closer to the action at the front of this field. Skinny Gamer now slipping further and further behind Kapoza, who has a slight twitch of the rear on the exit of what was turn number 9. Into 10 go the leading trio, and the leading pair separated by about 0.7 of a second. Shakes happy perhaps to bide their time and hope that you could take advantage of any mistake by the likes of Azuri. We will catch up with some of the battles and some of the action in the midfield in due course. Turn 14, the final corner. Azuri takes a little bit of curve, a little bit of the gravel. 128.1 is the quickest lap thus far. Will Shakes go for it on the inside of turn number 1? We know how many risks Azuri likes to take. These two drivers now inching further and further away from the chasing pair. Kapoza about 1.9 seconds to make that 2 seconds behind this leading pair as they make their way through turn number 3. The Prince of South Africa has joined the lobby down towards the bottom of this midfield. Let's hop down on towards our newcomer, Baleem Arshad. How well might he handle these rainy conditions? Ahead of him, of course, is Just Tendo. Baleem had a nightmare start, losing 3 positions since the start of this race. Just Tendo takes gets dragged wide by the lateral G-forces. Baleem will need no second invitation to just take that P6 spot. Just Tendo almost making contact with the back of Baleem there, and that run up towards that left-hand corner. Let us take a look at some of the tire compounds. Perk Millet had to make an early stop, perhaps taking early damage there. The rest of the field has yet to pit. Baleem making that overtake on Just Tendo, now up to P6. So back to the front we go. It is Shakes from Azuri in the battle for the lead of this race. 20 laps of racing still to go here at the Circuit de Catalunya, Barcelona. That gap building slowly and slowly. Azuri still quickest out here on this track. Shakes in the slipstream of the Haas ahead. Not quite able to summon up as much pace as Azuri, who leads this race and leads the timing sheets. Oh, Shakes! Was that a little bit of contact? No, it looks like Azuri might be having network issues. That car is glitching. And Azuri running higher wings, I think, so reckons Seakley. Looking at the way that Azuri is managing to eke out a bit of an advantage there at the front of this field. The Prince of South Africa is back in the lobby, presumably back in control of their car, and hunting down Espexa, who did so well to qualify as high as he did, but tumbled down the order to the Ferrari driver. Now, just fighting for a decent points position from the midfield. P8 for Espexa. This is the battle for P8, so we're on board with the Prince of South Africa. Shakes is getting dusted. Whoa, here comes the Prince of South Africa, almost making contact with the back of the Ferrari, but it looks like he's much more comfortable, and it is a clear overtake, as clear as you like by the Prince of South Africa, who looks now ahead, a huge gap ahead towards Just Tendo. Clear air in rainy conditions. You will see whether or not the Prince of South Africa will have something done. Shakes early into the pits. It's only the start of lap number 5. Overtaken by Kapoza. Is this because of wing damage? No. It might have been wing damage. It might have been a case that Shakes might have forgotten to change the wing if that was their intention, but it's a very, very early pit stop here. With 4-lap-old full wet compound tires, Shakes comes out in the midfield. Will Just Tendo be able to overtake Shakes on pit exit? No, not quite. And it's a rainy race. Oh, sure. Tendo takes a bit of the gravel there, loses ground, and that gap, which was less than a second, now 1.2 seconds and building. So at the front of this field, it's going to be Caboza versus Azuri in due course. Shakes is getting dusted in the rain, so said Don Radico. Thiago was telling them to get in, telling some of these guys to get in. Ooh, ahead of Espexa. Prince of South Africa made a huge mistake on the exit of what was turn 5, but did not manage to lose some ground. Oh, Espexa instead makes the mistake as he looked to take advantage of that minor error that the Prince of South Africa had, and now it's a huge breathing room for the Red Bull ahead, and it's daylight between the drivers in P8 and 9. Meanwhile, Bali Mashad, the newcomer, has managed to overtake Skinny Gamer, the Alpine driver, now up to P3 on the hunt, looking to trim that gap between themselves and Caboza. A lot of work to do. 7.7 seconds is that gap. Baleem will have their work cut out. Shakes is back in the pits. But why? There we go. That is confirmation. It was a wing change that he would have intended to make last time out. But now it's a fresh set of wet compound tires and a fresh wing as well. Baleem is moving, so says definitely Duke. And, well, with 2 pit stops having been executed, it is a massive risk of getting overtaken here by Shakes, who Duke says is having a very, very bad one. Azuri's glitch car broke Shakes' wing. I know that feeling, says Seclay in the comments section. We saw that moment of contact just before Azuri's car glitched to another position, and this is instead Baleem on the exit of turns 9 into 10, and the final sequences of corners to complete what would be their 6th lap, and to begin the 7th of a total 23 laps. So the field fairly spread out at this particular point, about 53 seconds separating race-leading Azuri and Shakes, who was at the back of this pack. Don Ravico reckons that Shakes must be running a dry setup, but as you say that, he's just overtaken the McLaren of Perk Mealy at the back of the field. Azuri still the leading driver, 7.9 seconds ahead of the veteran Caboza. A lot of catching up to do for the AlphaTauri driver, but Azuri has looked comfortable, been pretty much unchallenged for the most part of this race. I think some of these guys went 50-50 wings, reckon Seclay. Duke says, if we get rain in tomorrow's race, I might not even race. I'll just go to bed, says definitely Duke. Let's catch up now with Espexa, who is caught up with Tendo here, as they make their way through turn 4 and the run towards 5. Just Tendo wide of the apex. Espexa follows suit. Did not have enough grip under braking to be able to take advantage of the line that just Tendo took, and he loses a bit of ground to Espexa. Struggling here in rainy conditions. Tendo extends that gap, now more than a second and a half in this 8th lap. Sadly, of course, in these conditions, no DRS. Can only hope to take advantage of the slipstream, as Espexa is soon going to be under attack by none other than Shakes, who has a slight slide through turn number 9, and this will soon become a 3-car fight. Tendo went a little bit off the track, might lose a bit of ground. This is Shakes on board now. It's a 3-way fight down the main straight. He dives into the inside line, does Shakes, and as he does so, he's the quickest driver on track. 1 minute 26.652 is the fastest lap. Espexa in a straight line is too much sauce, too much pace, and perhaps He's running low wings. Oh, they go almost 3 wide through the initial sequences of corners. And Shakes has to take a little bit of a curve there and took a little bit of gravel, but he's effected the double overtake. And just Tendo, who was leading this trio coming into turn 1, is now at the back of this trio. As Shakes now takes the P7 spot, which was held by the Alfa Romeo just a couple of seconds ago. Expertly executed, but has a huge twitch of that rear on the exit of turn number 4. Slow moving turn 5. Shakes manages to keep hold of that advantage. And it's going to be a fight back of the ages here. He's the quickest man on track, but will that be enough? At some point was about 53 seconds behind. That gap has trimmed to about 48 seconds. He's got one of the freshest set of tires, 2 laps old, compared to the likes of Perk Mille, whose full wet compounds are about 6 lap old in comparison. So, Shakes will now have the Prince of South Africa in their sights. And, well, it's going to take a lot of doing. But that gap, 9.3 seconds and closing. Skinny Gamer versus Alfa Romeo. The battle for P4 is not too far, as we just hopped on board with the Skinny Gamer. Really had to catch that car on the exit of turn 3 into 4 they go. As you can see, the main racing line has eked out a little bit of a relatively grippier racing line. And there were yellow flags in the field behind. Looks like, the Prince of South Africa might have made a mistake bringing out the yellow flag. And what was 9 seconds becomes an overtake for Shakes. Clean as you like. He's now up to P6. Prince of South Africa, huge moment, bringing out a yellow flag. Struggling for grip on those 8-lap-old wet tires. And Shakes will not need a second invitation. It is now up to P6. Shakes, who himself has a slight twitch there in the run-up towards turn 9 and the back straight. Red Bulls running in formation in P6 and 7 as things currently stand. Back to Skinny Gamer we go. That gap was very close, but not anymore. Now 2 seconds and thereabouts. Newcomer Baleem has done really, really well to close that gap to Kaboza. It's now 2.5 seconds and closing. He's looked very, very comfortable as Baleem lost a lot of ground at the start of this race in that feisty lap 1, but now finds himself 2.3 seconds behind Kaboza, the veteran former Tier 1 driver versus the debutant in the BrakeAway Racing League. Almost at the halfway point of this mark. And it looks like if he manages to keep it together, this potential fight and overtake may yet be a foregone conclusion. But never say never, and it is not over, of course, until it is over. These 3 that currently hold on to the podium places have a 15-second buffer to Alfa Romeo, Aston Martin driver, who is trying to find their way into the reckoning for this potential podium finish. The gap is now a second and a half, less than a second and a half, that Baleem Rashad now has towards Kaboza. He's got about half of his battery power remaining, which on the verge of actually approaching 60% of that battery power. As behind them, Skinny Gamer has opted to come into the pit. Skinny Gamer will not want to risk potentially losing their car. Skinny Gamer in the pits means Shakes gets promoted to P5 for that, and will look to give Alfa Romeo a lot to think about. He's now within a second of the AlphaTauri ahead is Baleem Rashad. Looking very, very good in rainy conditions. Calm, composed, and controlled race ever since trying to claw their way up from what was a nightmare opening lap. Kaboza on the entry of 9. Trying to keep as much grip as possible. You can really see Kaboza wrestling with the car at this point. That rear just not quite biting as much as you would want. It is not easy in these conditions, of course. Caboza goes into the pits, and Belin says, you know what, I'll do exactly that. It is a full complement of coming into the pits for all of the top three drivers. Caboza, 5-second time penalty for speeding in the pit lane, but thankfully in Tier 3, that is not something which would come into consideration for him potentially being for that penalty, potentially standing. Azuri is already through the first sequences of corners. Shakes, who might be able to overtake in this run as these drivers make their way out the pits. The answer is only Alpareme. And he's going to be much, much closer to the action in the battle for the final podium places. So we're going to have a fight here on our hands. Even though Caboza and Belin will have a significant tire advantage here. We've reached the halfway point of this race. And it's going to be Shakes versus Belin versus Caboza. Now in the final portion of this race. Perth Mille had pitted earlier than they would have wanted. Their tires are about 10 laps old. Tendo's are 11 laps old, and they've also just come into the pits, as has Esclexa at the back of this field. Everybody's still running those wet tire compounds at the halfway point of this race, and we are watching Shakes trying to have their say in the battle for some of the higher point finishes in the fight for the podium. Azuri has begun the 13th of a total 23 laps, so we now have 10 laps of racing to go. Shakes is perhaps starting to feel the grip go away from him, loses a bit of ground to these drivers. Belin versus Caboza, one that we're going to watch very, very closely, of course. 65% battery power for Belin. Caboza has just deployed a little bit of their battery. He's down to about 78%, so it's a slight advantage to Caboza, although as in terms of tire age, they are neck and neck. Clay reckoned that Belin should have gone slightly longer than Caboza, may have affected an overtake by the way of an overcut. Considering how comfortable Belin looked in the run-up towards that pit stop. Both trying to manage their batteries as best as they possibly can. Tendo and Espexa have just swapped positions down towards the back of the field. Espexa really, we know what they're capable of, but in these conditions has not quite been on the mark. Belin, meanwhile, lost a little bit of ground. That gap, which was less than a second, now approaching the 1.5 second mark. And it does so. Caboza with the mistake this time. So they each exchanging mistakes as Azuri sets a fastest 1 minute 25.960 on those new wet compound tires. And how many mistakes can these two force out of one another? Caboza will soon begin the 14th lap, and Belin is trying to play the long game, trying to make sure that Caboza feels the pressure. Within half a second is the Alpine driver, making their presence felt in tricky conditions. And Caboza really struggling for grip, as you can see. The rears of that AlphaTauri just twitching and twitching. Peace, aka the Nucho, hoping, praying that not a drop of rain is felt here in Spain in tomorrow night's second tier race. Clay in the comment section is hoping for nothing other than pandemonium and carnage and rain as well in a race that he himself will miss. Caboza on the exit of turn 9, not quite having so much fun. Belin biding their time. As a brand new BrakeAway Racing League driver, how much risk will he take How much risk will he take trying to get as close as he possibly can in the run-up towards turn number 1? Uses their battery, deploys it now, but you could bet your bottom dollar that Caboza is doing exactly that. Not quite. 75%, they're going to go side by side. Will they into turn number 1? I believe thought about it, but tucks back into the slipstream of the AlphaTauri ahead. Putting Caboza under all the pressure, trying to force a mistake out of the veteran driver ahead. 2/10 is the gap that these two have. He goes off the racing line, does Baleem, trying to scare Caboza to coax a mistake out of the driver in the P2 spot. And as these two battle, Caboza's attentions, of course, have been turned completely towards the chasing Alpine. As they battle, it's advantage Azzurri, who has eked out a further couple of seconds in that gap between P1 and P2. 17 seconds is Azzurri's advantage now, who's looking scintillating as Baleem racks up a 3-second time penalty, which, assuming that Caboza's pit lane entry penalty might be scrapped, it might yet be advantage Caboza. But will that result in a little bit of complacency from the AlphaTauri driver that Baleem would look to take advantage of? Well, time will tell. Shakes has fallen further and further behind this pair in P2 and 3. He's about 6.6 seconds, and we will see whether or not Shakes' aging tires will possibly force a mistake even out of him. Shakes, one of the new championship leaders, of course, has their work cut out for him. 44 points for Shakes as Baleem makes another slight mistakes, which cost him a bit of time, and the gap between these two now inching towards that 1 second mark. Shakes trying to recover down in P4. Skinny Gamer is about 18 seconds behind the Red Bull, and a gap between himself and Alpha Reme. Almost 7 seconds is the Aston Martin driver behind Skinny Gamer. Perk Mille, way behind, being hunted down now by the Prince of South Africa. Will hop on board with the Red Bull. Both of the Red Bull drivers mired in midfield battles. Shakes down in P4. Prince of South Africa here in P8. Half a second behind Perk Mille. Much more comfortable. Dives on the inside. It is the clean overtake. And Perk Mille, on those aging wet tires, is just going to have to settle for the moment for P8. Back to Baleem versus Caboza on the main straight. Alpine driver not wasting any time this time around. Wheel to wheel, but will Caboza be braver on the brakes? Yes, he is. Baleem Marchand is going to look to still maintain the pressure on the AlphaTauri. They're side by side. They avoid making contact, and it is Baleem Marchand up to P2 in what has been a beautiful recovery drive after the nightmare of lap number 1. Caboza is going to look to fight back immediately in this 17th of a total 23 laps. To turn for their Caboza as a slight twitch, loses ground, loses a couple of tenths in that gap, now hovering at the 8/10 mark. Caboza has superior power remaining as far as that ERS is concerned, 81% you would note, compared to Baleem Marchand, who's down about 40%, so it's about half, 50% of battery power advantage, Caboza versus Baleem. Now, will the AlphaTauri go for it on this stretch of track? No, he's content to stay tucked into the slipstream, but turn 9 is where Caboza has not looked comfortable relative to the Alpine. We lose a little bit of ground through this section of corners. There's a yellow flag brought out ahead of these. It is Espexa who crashes out. Espexa is out, as we saw over there. Here comes the approaching Red Bull. Espexa is out at towards turn 13. It's a yellow flag, but no safety car, thankfully, as that car is just out on the margins of the track. And Espexa becomes the second driver to not finish this race, joining S. Buddha. And, well, brand new to Tier 3 is Espexa. And it's not such a great start for them. Meanwhile, Capoza has fallen behind Baleem by a factor of about 1.8 seconds. Baleem will look to make it a clean 3-second advantage before all is said and done here. And as they now race their way through turns 7 and 8, they're both approaching just Tendo, who is currently blasting their way down the back straight. 3 seconds each for Baleem and Tendo. And as you can see, it's been 2 stops for Shakes. But despite that, he's done very well as Shakes to make the way up to that P4 spot. 19 seconds is the gap, almost 20, between Azuri, who leads this race, has been pretty much, unchallenged since the start of proceedings. Has looked very, very good. Despite the network glitches, very, very comfortable in that P1 spot. Baleem Arshad, 19.1 seconds behind Capoza, slipping further and further behind the Alpine. That gap is now 3 seconds, hovering there and thereabouts. So Baleem will be very happy about that. Has already overtaken Tendo, and it's Capoza's turn to catch up to the back-marking Alfa Romeo. All you need to do here is keep it on track. It's a full house of points from P1 to P9, so they need not take unnecessary risks. Just Tendo almost hitting the back of the Alpine there. What was going on there to Just Tendo, who goes completely off the track, and that's going to give Capoza a clean run through. And knowing that Baleem has that time penalty to contend with, Capoza is now going to look to trim that gap closer and closer. So since the start of this race, both Capoza and Baleem have gained 2 places, Skinny Gamer as well. It's been a three-place game for Alfa Romeo, and the Prince of South Africa has gained 1. Just Tendo, despite being lapped, still gaining a net 2 places. Aim of the game is simple for Baleem. Maintain that 3-second gap. Capoza playing the long game, as you can see, using that remaining battery power, draining it down to about 59% at the end of that main straight. Meanwhile, Baleem, the battle for the P2 spot, is at about 32% of battery power remaining. So that is the situation here in the 20th of a total 23 laps. Just Tendo has been lapped. Perk Mille would have been lapped as well by the race-leading Azuri. But as I say that, in fact, Perk Mille is on the verge of being lapped. This is Perk on the exit of 10. And Azuri will say thank you very much and lap the back-marking McLaren driver. Shakes is coming into the pits again, or has come into the pits again. He's back out on a brand new set of wet tires, as definitely Duke duly noted there. Perhaps Shakes is gunning for the fastest lap of this race. The benchmark is 1 minute 25.960. The best that Shakes could do up until this point was a 26.652. Among the quickest drivers, but not quite at the level of Azuri. Now, with much, much lighter fuel load and just a couple of laps of racing remaining, it is advantage Shakes in the battle for that fastest lap. P4, considering how their race went, will not be a bad day. 2 pit stops and still fighting their way through the grid. We will be happy with that. I would have hoped, of course, for dry conditions to be able to see what could have been. Was sensational in qualifying, peerless in qualifying. Azuri tried, but did not quite come close pace-wise in dry conditions. But the race-leading Haas driver, unchallenged with just a couple of laps of racing still to go. Now making their way through turns 9 and 10. Still glitching. So still network issues for the Haas driver. on the verge of beginning the 22nd and penultimate lap, but not quite on it as far as their line through the final corner was concerned, beginning the penultimate lap now. Baleem Rashad, newcomer, still being hunted down by Kaboza. Who's doing very, very well to keep that gap below 3 seconds. But as I say that, Kaboza makes a huge error in the run towards the final corner, cost him a couple of tenths. And did he manage to save battery? Yes, he did. He's still at about, 60-odd% of battery power. So despite that mistake, that is really going to go a long way in helping him. Because his competitor, 3.3 seconds ahead, is down to about 24% of battery power. Kaboza being cheered on by Cyclay in the comment section. And Shakes has done it. A new fastest lap. 25.315, having just across the line to begin their penultimate lap. Oh, and on the exit of turn 2, it's a huge moment which sent the rear absolutely squirming, and Shakes did well to catch that car there and keep it moving. We're in the penultimate lap, so it's going to be a dash towards the line to confirm the results and indeed the points collected here from the 5th race of the season. Cyclay says rain is a good test. It's the first time that we're seeing such conditions pretty much throughout a race in this brand new season. So it has been an unforgiving race as far as conditions are concerned. And it has shown us a lot. That is Shakes overtaking Tendo. And pretty much next up should be Perk Millet. Azuri has begun the 23rd and final lap of this race. Kaboza has trimmed that gap down to 2.1 seconds. So it is advantage Kaboza in the battle for P2. Assuming, of course, that 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane will be nullified for Kaboza. 2.3 seconds that gap. Oh, but it's a mistake from Kaboza, who loses a couple of tenths on the exit of, that was, I believe, turn 4, that's Kaboza lost a little bit of ground. Still at a very, very advantageous position as far as their battery power is concerned, was at more than 70%. So now Baleem, at this point of the race, is really trying to eke out those final couple of tenths. Kaboza will absolutely drain the battery down this back straight and hope to keep that gap less than 3 seconds. Meanwhile, a word of appreciation, a word of applause for the man who has been absolutely dominant. Azuri was P2 in qualifying, but absolutely peerless in the race. Comes across the line to win the Spanish Grand Prix. Here comes Baleem towards the line, who has managed to eke out a 3-second advantage to Kaboza, and he's going to be able to hang on to that P2 spot compared to Kaboza, whose valiant effort means that he comes home in that P3 spot. It is still a podium, still a decent haul of points for the AlphaTauri driver who will come home in that P3 spot. Shakes will bring it home in P4 after a huge recovery drive as far as they're concerned. Behind them is Skinny Gamer versus Alpha Rayman, who are running very, very close to one another towards the final corners of this race. About a second and a half separating these drivers in the battle for P5. But there goes Skinny Gamer through the penultimate corner and the final turn number 14. Here comes Alpha Rayman now to stake their claim, and it is going to be P5 for the McLaren, P6 for Alpha Rayman, and the Prince of South Africa will bring it home in the 7th spot. A haul of points for Perth Millet and Just Tendo in P8 and 9 respectively. It's going to go a long way in their prospects for the rest of this season. The Prince of South Africa brings it home in P7 to conclude proceedings here in Spain. What an interesting race we had, challenging conditions, but they managed to bring it home. Baleem Rashad, newcomer, voted driver of the day. Do you agree? Let me know in the comments section. and we will get a decent view as to whether or not tiers 3, or rather tiers 2 and 1, will be in similarly challenging conditions. Circuit de Catalunya-Barcelona, that is Azuri, the star of the show, top step of the podium. What a welcome to the BrakeAway Racing League from Baleem Arshad, who has looked great. Kaboza takes that third and final podium spot. We can expect Baleem Arshad to do very, very interesting things here in their BrakeAway Racing League career, and we will see how they fare between now and the end of the season. Baleem Arshad, quicker than Kaboza, pace-wise in rainy conditions, as you can see. Shakes took the fastest lap, so that's going to be a decent haul of points for him. Sadly, Esclatza Enes Buda crashing out of this race. The Prince of South Africa says, what a nonsense race. Did not enjoy that. I love the push, though, says Billy Hendricks in the comments. I wonder what Ty is thinking every time. He has that little laugh. I'll say a whole host of things. Thank you, everybody, for taking part and being in the comment section. It was an interesting race. We do hope that Tier 2 gives us similarly challenging conditions, or even mixed conditions, where the drivers have to make decisions as far as pit stops are concerned. That is your field. Congratulations to Azuri, the class of the field in rainy conditions. Baleem on debut is on the podium. Kaboza hung on to that P3 spot. We will catch you tomorrow, 8 p.m. Central African time for Tier 2 action. Thank you, everybody, and good night.